everybody. Welcome to a Frantastic Friday here on the Bitchuation Room podcast. So happy to have you here. So glad you decided to press play. I am really excited because I have stories for you, but more importantly, I have a guest, Anthony Bartaway of Ukraine Without Hype, the podcast, direct from Kiev, is joining us. We're going to be talking about what happens now with Ukraine and the United States, with Ukraine, and obviously, most importantly, Russia. What the hell now that Donald Trump has basically taken a cartoonish level of TNT to our, our international allyships, our foreign policy. So really excited to get his insight. It's going to be a great discussion. If you guys have thoughts or questions, please throw them in. The ye old super chat is a way to get them through. And if you're listening after the fact, we will have Anthony back. So don't you worry. We won't. There's no way we could cover everything in this mere time. But if you are here, thank you so much. I hope you press the like button on YouTube. I hope you are subscribed on YouTube. I hope you share the stream and let people know what you get up to. It helps people discover us. I also hope that you, if you're on Twitch, are a subscriber right now. And most importantly, I'm just putting things around. I hope you're a patron of this show. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Endless perks. Discounts on merch. Discounts on our sponsor. Also, access to our bonus episodes, and on Wednesday, a long bonus episode digging into, everything from the trans athlete hysteria in the address to Congress and the trans athlete hysteria on people who I used to be considered colleagues, progressives. What else do we talk about? I mean, it was just on and on. I'm like on and on. You know what? By Wednesday, I literally forget. But we did a lot. So become a patron and go back. I always have to tee it up because so much has happened since Wednesday. Donald Trump and the Supreme Court, that relationship, that's fun. Apparently, Amy Coney Barrett is a woke DEI hire. So yeah. And just more broadly, support the show and, the small team that needs to get adequately compensated for their work. And thanks to you, they can be. So really appreciate you guys becoming a member of the Frantifa. And before I bring in my guests, let me just say that these days, again, mom brain, news brain, totally fried, no time for myself, truly, and certainly no time to make food, just like sustenance, eating right, and especially eating vegetables at all. I know that sounds corny, but let's be real. I have a kid. It's mac and cheese. It's, fish sticks, which are really good, but we do need to eat well. And that's why I've been relying on Factor meals, and they have been such a saving grace with the busyness, with the wanting to eat healthy. They're not frozen. They're always fresh. I just had a butter tofu, an Indian butter tofu. It was so good. I'm a big tofu queen though. And it was delicious. They're well balanced. They have chef made gourmet meals. They make eating well easy, dietitian approved, ready to heat in 2 minutes, so you can feel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you, like a 2-year-old having a meltdown. Factor arrives fresh, fully prepared for any active, busy lifestyle. They'll help you feel your best all day long. Wholesome smoothies, breakfast, grab-and-go snacks. Their smoothies are really good. So reach your goals this year. Again, it's only March, but we can still do that. And thank our sponsor, Factor, for sponsoring today's episode by using the coupon code Bitchuation50OFF. That's right, BITCHUATION 50 off. To get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. Again, factormeals.com/Bitchuation50OFF, or just go to factormeals.com and put in Bitchuation50OFF. Free shipping. Really great time to try it. Just see if you like it. You know what I mean? And you can custom make it. They've got keto and protein and vegan and all that. So it's good stuff. Yay. And now that that's out of the way, let me get into it. he needs to tell me more about himself. I'm very excited, but he is the co-host of a podcast called Ukraine Without Hype. He is direct from Kiev. He's going to help us break down what the hell is going on from the Ukrainian vantage point, I guess, or an American Ukrainian vantage point. Please welcome Anthony Bartaway.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Thank you so much for being here. I know it's not too late where you are.
Yeah, it's just 11. It's difference, but it's actually an attack at this exact moment, so I don't think anyone's be falling asleep anytime
Okay, so
soon.
this happened right before we went live, and you were like, "Oh no, it's an attack." And I'm sorry. So, a Russian attack. You're
Yeah.
getting an alarm. What does that mean? What does that look like? What happens when this happens?
So it always depends. When you just hear it, there'll just be the alarm. And actually, I used to have an extremely loud alarm immediately outside my window, which was even more of a problem at night sometimes. But you can hear the alarm. Then there will be Telegram channels you can go to get more details of what is the alarm about. Right now, it's Shaheds, these Iranian designed drones, mostly made in Russia now. They are usually can be shot down just with small arms fire. So you'll see people driving around, like a lot of times, like it's a truck with a machine gun in the back. Will take that down most of the time. It
Are
can
the
be
the drones are armed?
Yes, they are suicide drones. They hit something, then they explode.
Damn. And so you are in the capital now, correct?
Yes, I'm in Kiev.
And when the alarm rings out, we're talking about not like an Amber Alert on your phone. It's like a siren throughout the city.
Yeah, there's sirens on big loudspeakers now. Yeah.
Wow. And then people, and who's going out to shoot them down? Like infantry, military, or just like
So
volunteers?
it's the military.
Mhm,
So there's different forms of it. When it is for shot heads, they can be shot down just with regular guns sometimes.
mhm.
Even when there are the very first drone attacks before we were really ready for them, there were cops just shooting at them with their surface
Oh,
weapons,
damn.
and
Oh,
that
damn.
kind of worked. Uh, but if it's a missile, which is going to be the big problem with American aid right now, because most of the anti-missile weaponry is American Patriot systems, and we're not getting any more of those. Uh, they can cause a lot more damage. So sometimes they'll be coming from a Russian jet. So first you'll get an alarm that says there's a Russian jet in the air. A lot of the time they don't do anything. Some of the time they'll actually fire the missile, and then you'll kind of have a couple minutes warning before there is an explosion. Or
And the American
sometimes with the
Patriot missiles,
hypersonics, yeah. Or sometimes with the hypersonics, you'll hear the explosion, then there's alarm because they're that much faster.
um, only slightly terrifying. All of this. The Let's talk about the American Patriot missiles because I think there is this lack of understanding about what kind of missiles are being sold to Ukraine. And I was listening to your show recently where you explained that these Patriot missiles are mostly to shoot down Russian missiles. Is that correct? To intercept?
Yes, they're anti-air missiles. They are very, very loud when they're used. You know when it happens. But America's basically the only way to get them. Some other countries will have supplies of them and will send their American-made stuff to Ukraine, but I'm pretty sure that it's all coming from the US. There are alternatives, but none of them are really as good as the Patriots.
Got
So
it.
what I expect will happen in the next week or so, and it's already kind of started to happen, is that now that the Russians know that we will not be getting any more Patriots, they'll probably be launching a lot more missiles to exhaust the supply that we have now.
Interesting strategy, and again, also low key terrifying, or high key terrifying. Let's just delve into like why it's important to speak with you, why we're doing this. Obviously, uh, and I kind of want to just name like the fact that Trump has made
Mhm.
everything when it comes to foreign policy that much worse. Um, is largely the impetus to have this conversation. However, we had reached out, we had discussed this, I think,
Mhm.
even before Trump was elected. But I think broadly, there has been, especially from the American left, a lack of understanding about the suffering of Ukraine, the war, the Russian war on Ukraine, and I think for many different reasons. And a few of those reasons, and I'm curious about your perspective. And I just want to be honest, like, I haven't covered Ukraine nearly enough in
Mhm.
these years since the war started, but that it's because largely as like someone who's an anti-war person who doesn't believe the United States should be dealing weapons around the world, right? That doesn't trust the history of United States intervention or support, that there's always like, some other motive. There always is not the benevolent, we're protecting blank country. There's always, there's always some deal behind the scenes. And that ultimately, like in Afghanistan, when we say we're going to liberate the people of Afghanistan, we know that's largely, BS. And so there's that knee-jerk anti-imperialism, which can often be incredibly dumb. I just want to name that. And I think then the other portion of it is that the true grappling with Russia's influence, and especially, in my opinion, influence in American politics and influence in the Republican Party and influence in this administration, seems to have been sort of the realm of liberal mainstream news outlets, the Rachel Maddows and whatnot. Seems to have been sort of the Robert Mueller's job, former CIA or FBI director, excuse me, and former Republican. And that was seen as kind of like, that's what the mainstream is doing. Whereas the left has a different critique. The left isn't going to think that it's all about Russia. It's Russiagate. I'm someone who's an outlier because I've never called it Russiagate. I never have called it a hoax. And I think it's lazy thinking to say, well, just because Hillary Clinton blamed Russia for her loss means that what is happening is not actually happening, and means that the current president of the United States is not actually compromised by a whole lot of Russian money and influence. So that, I think, is why there's been a little bit of a radio silence. But I'm curious as to why, like, your thoughts and how it's been as someone who's been following this, lives in Kiev, and I think broadly considers themselves, a progressive. Like, what do you feel like? What's it been like, and what do you feel like we've missed?
Oh yeah, I'm absolutely a socialist. I'll go beyond progressive into like the far left end of the spectrum, actually.
Hell yeah.
Um, the I always kind of look at things from a historical perspective more than anything else. So if you look to the 90s, you had a lot of the people on the left, the Noam Chomsky, Parenti, all these figures who were just outright defending Slobodan Milosevic.
Mm,
So there's one factor. Then when you look at the formation of what's like the left right now, I think a lot of that begins with Occupy and
mhm,
how there was a big blossoming of kind of progressive media in the aftermath of Occupy that started with Occupy, TYT among them, that really became its own thing. But then within months of that happening, we have the Syrian civil war, which
mhm.
meant that there is this new, uh, I guess, ecosystem that was just freshly made. There was a lot of weird entryism from bad actors. Uh,
Oh, the
what's his
Syrian
name?
civil war was absolutely the worst
Yeah.
time to be on the left in the United States. Trust me. There's a lot of people I still don't trust because of their takes around that war. But continue.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So we had people who, without using specific names, for example, had a magazine in Moscow where they were bragging about raping children that somehow became major voices in progressive American media.
You could just say Matt
Uh,
Taibbi.
okay, there we go. Um, and who worked with a very prominent Russian Nazi. So it's always been there since then, and it's been hard to shake. And like you said, there's the issue with anti-imperialism, but like other people can do imperialism too.
Mhm,
And even
mhm,
beyond that, now I kind of brushed away a lot of these critiques aside by saying, oh, these people are just reflexively anything that America takes a side of. If you take the other side, that must be correct. Vulgar campism, whatever. But I could at least understand that in a way.
mhm.
Now, though, the same people who were anti-Ukraine because of its association with America are now still anti-Ukraine after we're under threat from American imperialism. So it wasn't the anti-Americanism. There's something deeper than that, like something much more scary behind that. That just using a different outlet, different aesthetics for what is the same impulses are behind MAGA or Russian nationalism or what have you. So now that they've spent the last 3 years essentially making the argument that a great power is allowed to have its sphere of influence, and within that sphere of influence, you can do whatever you want, as that applies to Russia with Ukraine, Russia with the Baltic states, even. There's a lot of nasty things. The left has been saying a lot about a lot of people from Eastern Europe, from the Caucasus, from Central Asia. How can they then turn around and say that America can't do the same in Canada and Mexico and Panama and Greenland? It's the same thing. So how are you going to kind of defend one and not go against another?
Sure.
Are these people who have been so anti-Ukraine all these years, if there is, a American tank column rolling towards Toronto, are they going to say, this time it's different, this great power isn't allowed to have its sphere of influence? I honestly don't think so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's also been, I mean, obviously this corollary that the neoliberal establishment does not understand, or the, pro-war establishment doesn't understand, about, I mean, I think Israel has been an interesting piece of this, and in looking at what they've been doing, obviously, to Gaza and this ongoing, genocide. And that I think if we are going, some of this anti-imperialism, or the anti-imperialism becomes so simplistic because some of those same voices speak very loudly. I mean, you look at a Glenn Greenwald, have spoken very loudly in favor of the Palestinian people, but is radio silent on Ukraine, or not radio silent, actually very much parroting Russian talking points on Ukraine. So it cuts both ways. It cuts against leftists who are not overly eager, righteously and rightfully eager about Palestine, but are silent on Ukraine. And it cuts against centrists and neoliberals or war hawks who are eager to support Israel, but not eager to obviously support Russia, both in the aggressors in these cases. So I did just want to say, the way that you saying, like, Noam Chomsky defending Milosevic, I've never understood him to be defending Milosevic. I feel like but I also empathize with the idea that he felt because I remember I would listen to Chomsky all the time, especially when it comes to NATO, right? And all these critiques about NATO and the bombing of Serbia from the Clinton administration, saying his argument was it made things worse, that sort of Clinton getting involved and bombing Serbia caused a greater crackdown on the Bosnian people, on Kosovo, and that Milosevic, it had the opposite effect. So do you know what I'm saying? I just want to name that because, I understand that Chomsky's got questionable, stances now, and I'm totally willing, if you were I disagree with that, but that's where that's what I learned from him, listening to him. It was U.S. intervention didn't help in this situation, doesn't help, right? But let's just leave that. So I just wanted to let's leave it, and then let's talk about what's going on in Ukraine now and what the hell, because just tell me about what it's like to be there. How long have you lived there? Why did you start Ukraine Without Hype? And I guess in terms of what's like to be there, how many people have left? You know what I mean? There's massive millions of refugees, and
yeah, I'll kind of take that in chronological order.
Yeah.
So I've been here for almost 10 years now. I came to Ukraine originally in the aftermath of the Revolution of Dignity, Euromaidan. The stuff was still on Maidan when I showed up. It was the opening phases of the war, so there were people, recruiting for the army at the bus station, or they would set up a table outside of the McDonald's and say, "Come defend your country from the invading Russians." If you watch a Revolutionary War movie and get the town crier going into the tavern, it was that kind of deal. Just someone show up, please.
Right.
Yeah. So I've been initially I was a part of NGOs, civil society, that kind of thing. that pays virtually no money. So I was also an English teacher to make sure I could still eat food.
Every expat is. I was one as well.
Yeah. Thankfully, I left that behind long ago. I eventually went into journalism when they began recruiting for a TV station. So I was kind of middle management at a TV station for about 2 years, bounced around Ukrainian media, NGO stuff, whoever needs me for things. Okay, what was the next part? The war.
What has it been like since? I mean, we're what? We're over 3 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And what has it been like? What is Kiev like? And maybe even speak to like the recruitment. We've been hearing a lot of like propaganda about what recruitment is. I mean, that's a different question, but yes, I guess I just wanted to know what it's like.
Yeah, so things have changed a lot. When the city was still under siege, that first night when Putin gave his big speech, I still have the photo of my Twitter post asking, are those our jets or theirs? And that's kind of how the war began for me, as I just heard jets overhead. Like, well, guess it started.
Yeah.
It turned out to be both. There was a dogfight going on. I happened to live directly in between two bridges and on what I thought was a more vulnerable side of the city. So I thought, okay, I guess I can kind of scoot away because one of these bridges is going to get bombed and I'll get stuck. So I headed over to my friends, my co-host of the podcast, Romeo, to his place. That turned out to be less safe than I actually was beforehand, but I wouldn't have guessed that at the time until we kind of made a strategic retreat to his family summer house in the city of Vinica, which is kind of the next one to the southwest. Under normal circumstances, it would be about a 2.5-hour drive. On that day, it took us about 11 hours to get through checkpoints and
everyone
everything.
Leaving.
I lost my passport on the way because it was dark and it fell out of my pocket. That turned into a whole thing. So for the first about month, or for the duration of the siege, I spent most of it in Vinica while coming back to Kiev for various reasons to bring stuff to soldiers here who we're friends with, that kind of thing. Life kind of eventually became normal again, kind of. For the first couple weeks or so, everything was still locked down. There were still trench lines running right through my neighborhood. I live right next to this one neighborhood that's on an island, and they turned that into kind of a fortress. They're already kind of replacing the water pipes. So they took the water pipes that weren't installed yet and used them to build kind of a wall around where all the entrances to the neighborhood were. The bridge was blocked up with buses so that no one could like go over it. So they just took all the city buses and kind of jammed the bridge full of them.
Damn.
In case one side of the city fell, they would not be able to cross the bridge to the other side.
Damn.
So that was intense for a while. But after a while, right now in Kiev, if you go about your day, most of the time, it seems fairly normal. There's a lot of things like businesses, restaurants, or whatever that closed and never opened up again. But otherwise, mostly a normal city, except sometimes we get bombed. So that's kind of the most surreal part, is you'll go through the night and you'll hear a bunch of explosions. And then the next day you just kind of have to go to work like it's normal. So capitalism does not stop in the middle of war, unfortunately. I still have to pay rent.
We've seen that in Gaza, right? You're like, people are actually still having to buy basic goods and paying way too much for them. It can't be easy. And I guess I also wanted to ask you, you've been there 10 years. So even before the war, you were maybe on the receiving end as someone who lives in Ukraine of Russian aggression. I can't remember which year it was, but the gas shutoffs, the electrical, and or I think was it internet shutoffs? Can you just talk about maybe what some of that aggression looked like and what was happening?
Yeah, so we don't really have a separate word for it yet. We kind of see it as all part of one war, but I'll just call it like the Donbass War, just to be easy. 2014 through 2022, when all the fighting was located in first Crimea and then Donbass. So throughout, there was always a bunch of cyber attacks, of course. My bank was taken down a few days. One time when I was at the TV station, this one Russian cyber attack took down basically everything. So we kind of had to go analog with it.
My God.
That was very annoying, being used to doing everything digitally to be much more tactile. But a lot of that was kind of taken care of. Ukraine has very good hackers as well. So a lot of the cyber attacks, we got a good amount of durability for them. And as the years went on, we got better at defending against all kinds of stuff. In Donbass, and as a journalist, I had been to Donbass. I had been to the front lines prior, to the point where I was there literally a month before the full scale invasion. I was asking, like, are you prepared for this? Like, what's going on? And they said,
Right.
well, if there's a war, we're ready for it. If not, we'll stay here. But at the same time, they told me directly they felt that they were forgotten by the world. Like, we've been out here for 8 years now, and everyone kind of forgot that we're still fighting this. And then, honestly, a week after I left, one of them got shot by a sniper.
Oh my God.
So that was during the buildup of Russia attacking.
Sure.
But throughout those years, most of the time, unless you lived in Donbass, in the ATO, anti-terrorist operation zone, if you lived outside of that, it was pretty normal. Or I had been on vacation to this one like beach resort town that's immediately outside of Crimea, where if I was literally like 5 minutes away from Crimea if I kept going southwards, and there would have been like a military checkpoint, but just like, don't go to the military checkpoint, stay at your beach resort, everything's fine. That's completely occupied now. That's actually the capital of the Zaporizhia Oblast, like the occupation capital. So that's all gone. A lot of memories and things are now destroyed. Yeah,
of course they took the beach resort. Can I ask you then, more specifically, what is the state of the war in terms of the territory that Russia currently occupies? Donbass, we know, is in the east. It's the eastern region. We've heard, I was going to say Trump, Putin claim, these folks are actually Russian, blah, 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 blah. They, we obviously know there's like a separatist movement, but can you just explain like what is in control, what is under Russian control right now? What would so-called peace or the cessation of hostilities as it is right now, what would that look like for Russia?
So just small correction there. There was no separatist movement until Russia came forward. There were a couple of like weird Nazi gangs that operated in Donbass before 2014. Most of them funded by the Russian oligarch Konstantin Malafeyev, sometimes called the Orthodox oligarch because he is one of the main sponsors of the Russian Orthodox Church, who promoted this ideology of recreating Russian empire like 19th century style. And there was just these handful of gangs, like some of them were Duganist, that kind of thing, but they were basically nothing. The person who really got it going was literally just a Russian KGB agent who had fought in Bosnia, who had fought in Chechnya, who then came to Donbass and kind of organized anything. Igor Girkin, or Igor Strelkov was his code name, but Igor Girkin.
Okay.
Who then became, but now he kind of fell out of favor, kind of became this war blogger, and now became kind of a pathetic figure because no one cares about him in Russia anymore, and got arrested for criticizing Putin for not going pro-war enough for his taste.
One of those.
The revolution eats its own.
Yes.
And the current leader of the Donetsk People's Republic was a guy who just ran like a Ponzi scheme, was what he was famous for. So most of them were just regular mafia guys. When they released the prisons, that's when they got their actual army. Most of them were either mafia or just straight up Russian soldiers. So there's this idea that there was a organic separatist movement. There never was. I know lots of people from Donbass. For whatever reason, like half the people I know are from Donbass, and they've always told me that these people were like maybe a couple of football hooligans and who would throw up Nazi salutes sometimes, and that's about the extent of the
Right.
separatist movement. But right now, the state of the war, which kind of makes this turn by the United States even more frustrating because it's been getting better this last 2 weeks, where everything kind of goes, there's crests and troughs. The war, it kind of goes back and forth a lot. And for the last few months, since the fall of the town of Avdiivka, which was about this time last year, actually, the Russians have had the initiative. But within these last few weeks, really since the beginning of the year, they were kind of running out of steam a lot, because in anticipation for the elections, in order to kind of put pressure on America, they were going as hard as they possibly could. Essentially, they were churning through men and equipment and trucks and
preparing
everything
for their election.
Preparing for the American election.
Preparing for the American election, right?
Yeah, in order to what we're seeing now, that's what they're trying to influence by creating this idea of Ukraine's hopeless. They can't do anything, so we have to call it all now. So they were going really, really hard, to the point where they were just getting absolutely brutalized every day, but still making gains because of it. Like, you can shoot as many of them as you want. If they keep coming, they'll keep coming.
Right.
Then at the beginning of this year, we saw even some footage from drones of Russian soldiers literally being told to go forward on crutches. They're reaching the end of the current offensive before they would have to pause and get more stuff and more people, that kind of thing. So now Ukraine is pushing back in a lot of these places. The offensive is basically stalled out and being slowly pushed back in most parts of the front. Most of the hot spots have been stabilized. So having this all happening now, just when Ukraine was about to start pushing back in its own direction, is extremely frustrating.
Yeah.
The part of the country that's occupied right now is essential. So I actually have a map right here. So the middle part, the river, it's all mirrored, so I can't do it very well. I'm done with my hands. So there's a river that goes through kind of the middle of the country. And on one hand, where there is Kherson, which is a city that the Russians held in the first year of the war, but was then taken back. That's kind of the front line. So everything, I'm trying so hard, here is occupied. So the coast of the Black Sea, of the Azov Sea, just an aside, Trump likes to say that Russia never took any territory when he was president. That's not true. During his presidency, they essentially, so Kherson at the bottom there, right? Yeah, there we go. So all this, through Melitopol, Mariupol, Donetsk, that is currently occupied. Or if you go to Deep State Map, that's one website that kind of shows pretty up to date. Okay, will do. So that is the southeast of the country. That is where a lot of my friends are from. That's where I spent a lot of time. I consider that to be my part of the country, kind of, as a foreigner coming in. That's kind of the part of the country I got the most attachment to. Yeah. So green is what Russia was kicked out of. Red is where they are now. Got it. So it's pretty massive. Yes.
And where would the Donbass be? Is this like sort of
the far right part of that? Yeah.
Like right here.
Yeah, where it goes like up and down vertical, that's where the Donbass is.
This
Luhansk
is
Oblast, yeah.
So it's
Luhansk
a
Oblast in the
lot
north.
more.
Yes. And what Russia's claiming is essentially Luhansk Oblast, Donetsk Oblast, Zaporizhia Oblast, and Kherson Oblast. So on those lines, you can see like the gray line, that's the outline of the state. Oblast is like province. And according to the Russians, they have fully annexed all of that, even the parts of it that they have not actually taken or have ever taken, and would require multiple very large cities to storm that they've never been able to get anywhere near. And in fact, the Russians have only taken 2 major cities this entire time of these last 3 years, which is Mariupol and Melitopol, which all happened in the first 3 months. So ever
Right.
since then, they have not been able to take a major city, and they've claimed several of them. And it's like and what they say is, we have made it a part of our constitution that these regions are a part of our country, and therefore in any negotiation, legally we can't give them up. It's in our constitution. It's right there. So they claim the city of Zaporizhia, especially, which is a pretty big city. I'm from Detroit. I kind of consider Zaporizhia the Ukrainian equivalent of Detroit, in that
Okay.
it has the automotive industry, has kind of like a historical cultural importance. So it's pretty big. It's industrial heartland kind of thing. So they claim Zaporizhia as their own, and they claim Kherson as their own.
Which
Those are
are
the
cities they don't
two.
fully control.
Yes, they've never touched Zaporizhia, and they were kicked out of Kherson, and they
So
say that those are legally part of Russia.
right, because we made a constitution about it, which okay, cool, dude. Nobody cares. But also,
Right.
like, so the state right now isn't that they've like, oh no, Russia's like crushing it and they've taken all these new cities. It's like, no, as you're saying, it's two. It was the first 3 months of the war. And so what would it even look like to for Russia to stop right now? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, they would naturally, it seems, have to withdraw. Or I mean, like this is like the question of like, I mean, we can obviously get into Trump
Mhm.
and
Well,
Zelensky and
yeah,
Putin
yeah.
and all this, but like even just sort of like physically and strategically, or not even strategically, but like it doesn't even seem like where they are is like held or settled territory.
No, and the thing with Russia is, as much as Trump is demanding that Ukraine come to the table right now, this entire time Russia has been saying, we're not going to go to negotiations.
Right.
So as Ukraine is saying, if you don't go to negotiations, we're gonna like essentially join the war against you. It sounds like sometimes.
Well, can you
And
tell
this
me
old yeah,
tell us though, because they did come to the table, but not with Zelensky, not with Ukraine.
they went with Trump.
You
Yeah.
talked about this on your most recent episode, and I know there's a new one dropping soon. But about Russia coming to the table with the United States and Trump's
Mhm.
administration in Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia. What was that meeting like? What should we know about that meeting? What the hell did they talk about? What
Well,
happened there?
nothing really happened at the meeting. So if we're gonna go away and say that this specific action happened, nothing really happened there. But it did break some very problematic taboos that have been existing, which was the phrase has always been nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. You cannot meet with Russia without Ukraine at the table. You can't negotiate over our heads. You do not have the authority to negotiate for us. Even if you abandon Ukraine, the war's still going to be happening. It will just be far more bloody and awful, and a lot more people will die. So they can't make that decision on our behalf. I say our, I'm American, I'm not Ukrainian, but I feel more here than I do
Sure,
there.
you're there.
Yeah. So this meeting of beginning this rapprochement between America and Russia is going to continue. We've already seen that the administration has said that they will begin. It's another alarm. Let me just check right quick.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that you guys talked about in this meeting is that about the meeting is that it was like Trump's like total B team. Everyone's talked about this.
Yeah.
B team, C team. I mean, I don't even know what their A team would look like. And then just
I
seasoned
just
Russian diplomats like Sergei Lavrov and all these people who've been like perpetually like strong arming American, well, specifically Republicans who went to this meeting and were like, as you guys described it, kind of like, what we say goes, guys.
Mhm.
So we're back now. We
The
got the
thing with
ear of Donald Trump.
Yeah, the thing with diplomacy is you kind of want someone who's an expert in what they're talking about. When we have done that without experts, America has not done very well. We've seen I've critiques about a lot of conflicts in the world when we've done that, but when you want to have these experts, you want to have experts in both the field and whoever you're across the table from. America sends nobody of any importance, or I mean, this is going to be the thing about everything in the United States government right now. Everyone's incompetent. Everyone
Mhm.
is put in place to be incompetent because a competent government is there to prevent people from doing crimes, and they want to do crimes. So why would you put people in charge of not doing crimes? So while the Russians sent these people who were like experts in America, there's like these American studies programs through these universities that are like pretty top notch. I have a Russian friend who went to one of them and has a lot of complaints about that when she had, you know, the wool pulled from her eyes of Russian propaganda. She was in the pipeline for that kind of thing before not doing that. But yeah, they really sent a pretty strong team to negotiate. They know Trump's how do you even know what to say? Personality issues. They know how to flatter. Lavrov has been known as being, well, before the full-scale invasion, I had a higher opinion of his skills as a diplomat than I do now. It felt like this is kind of a conspiracy theory I have, but I'm pretty sure they didn't tell Lavrov beforehand in order so he could kind of not know he was lying. That's kind of he seemed different after the full
what's
scale.
funny about the invasion was like nobody thought it would happen except for Putin and Biden. Like American intelligence was like, this is gonna happen. Everyone was like, shut up. That seemed like Putin and Biden were like very sure. Like in other words, US intelligence, which is now by the way being dismantled when it comes to Russia. And they are not sharing intel with Ukraine. That is happening ever since this meeting last week. So the intel was good, actually.
Yes,
maybe Lavrov wasn't hip to it, but I guess, you know, let's before we look at Trump, I did just want to ask about Biden. Money for money for Ukraine was I think always seen broadly, especially in the beginning, as a good thing. And even by, I think, the left, I feel like there is a misunderstanding of, number one, the quantity of money, and also the quantity of money to do what, right? Like how much does a roughly $172 billion that the US has given, how much does that do? And it seems like the answer is not actually that much. And then we all know that, yes, you know, European nations have given money, and together the same, if not more, than the United States.
Yeah, about.
So I guess, what is your assessment of like aid to Ukraine, and like your reaction to, you know, it's almost like I think of the this is a weird corollary, but like Obama's like stimulus program after the big economic recession, right? And I mean, the crash in 2008. Everyone was like, this is good stimulus money, and it needed to be like 3 times as much, you know. Now obviously that is, you know, American money being spent in the United States, but like in order to actually fully support Ukraine or help Ukraine win the war, it seems like there needed to be more money. But was that a strategy to just like, let's just give them something to keep it at least stable? But what are your thoughts on that? What should people know?
Yeah, I think it's less the amount than the timing and what it was used for that was the problem. But just to break it down, so there was the amount that was earmarked, that was at 107 something, I forget right now, but not all of that was spent. And that's pretty normal for any kind of budget, is that there's the amount that's supposed to be spent, then the amount that's actually spent is usually less. Bureaucracy is a lot, going through all the channels, not everything makes it. There's inefficiencies, which kind of is depressing with this whole DOGE
being taken care of. With DOGE now.
There is inefficiency. Yes, we should get rid of that, but I feel any attempt to get rid of an inefficiency, even if we come out of this in a good position, it will be tied to this stupid Elon idea and will never happen again, because we'll just see it as fascist centrism. But of that, from America, most of that went to military support. Ukraine is a poor country. It did not have a tremendous domestic military production industry. And in fact, before 2014, it was essentially a demilitarized country.
Yeah.
In the 90s and through the 2000s, Ukraine gave up a lot of its weapons. A lot of people talk about the Budapest Budapest Memorandum, which gave up the nukes. But beyond that, Ukraine gave up its strategic bombers, a lot of ammunition, and all of this was done with the assumption that Russia and America would be protecting Ukraine's borders for it. There are a lot of Ukrainians who are very proud of becoming a nearly pacifistic country, and look where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
And what will that say about any other country that wants to disarm in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and in terms of like what money would have been needed, I mean, I think there's always been, it's not just about the money, but it's also about the kind of weaponry.
Yes.
And the fear, obviously, Russia being a nuclear armed nation, that Putin, I mean, the guy, COVID clearly, Putin had the worst COVID out of anybody. Let's be real. Like all the, your crazy uncle who was an anti-masker who, lost their mind, or someone got into QAnon. Putin really lost his fucking mind. Obviously, the war.
He's a full-blown conspiracy theorist. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the war on Ukraine is absolutely evidence that he lost his goddamn mind over, I think we were just talking about, over maybe the advice of some of his closest advisors. But so the idea that he wouldn't use a nuke, should be dispelled immediately, because dude is nuts.
No, he doesn't want to die. He goes through a lot of effort to not die, including not going near anyone who might cough on him.
Yes.
And he has so much money. He just has more money than any human that has ever lived ever. Like no one, he wants to keep that money.
Yeah.
And he's gone through a lot of effort to keep his family out of any kind of danger, even attention. He is very about self-preservation, and he would, the possibility of nuclear war is basically zero. And they have threatened it a bunch, and it's never happened. We have crossed every single red line that they pretended to have, and nothing happened. But more on the issue with the aid. Beyond that, a lot of the dollar amount is kind of a accountant's trick, almost, I want to say. So a lot of the stuff that Ukraine is being given from the United States is old, is at least 2 generations behind. It is not the new stuff. When tanks are sent over, they've not even sent that many tanks. They sent like 3 dozen tanks, which was kind of a problem in its own. But they were all downgraded versions. They were all cheaper versions. And they had been sitting in some warehouse in New Mexico for the last 40 years. And America's been paying for the upkeep of them that entire time. And when the expense is given of what is given to Ukraine, it's not how much those cost when they were made. Like this helmet cost $500 when we made it in 1974, and it's been sitting in a warehouse ever since then. They don't make that the thing that's charged. It's what's replacing it. So whatever helmet is made in 2025 and is put back into that warehouse, that is the dollar amount charged, and it's much higher. So
are you telling me there's like waste and like real waste and abuse in the American military?
Yeah. So all this stuff
of cooking of the books. Okay, so right, it's kind of like it's not really concretely going to top of the line, new, or even physical military assistance.
Yeah, most of it's older than me. Then some of it is then humanitarian assistance, and much more of this comes from Europe, actually, but America is also a part of it, where the Ukrainian economy is kind of in shambles right now. So a lot of it does have to be propped up by these very complex financial instruments that are then underwritten by the United States or Europe or some entity within them to say that they have the full faith and credit. And that has meant that the hryvnia, the Ukrainian unit of currency, has stayed mostly stable at 40 hryvnia to the dollar. Now it's like 42 hryvnia to the dollar. Has been able to stay mostly okay. Before the war, it was closer to like 25. In 2013, it's like 8. So there's been pretty intense inflation, but it'd be a lot worse if it wasn't for the economic assistance from the Americans
from the
and the
Americans, and you're
Europeans.
saying Europeans. Yeah.
And the Europeans.
That's
Europeans
huge.
give much more civilian aid, and America gives much more military aid. And altogether, it balances out, but that's kind of what they specialize in. Or a lot of civil servants right now are being paid for through this aid. Again, so like the DMV guy, some of that is being paid for by foreigners to just make so the state apparatus keeps going.
Right. Thank you for explaining that. Can I ask you about obviously what happened only a week ago, which was this meeting between Zelensky and Donald Trump in the Oval Office. This was supposed to be the meeting that would precede a signature of a deal on 50% of Ukraine's mineral resources that would be, I guess, exploited by the United States, given to the United States, whatever it was, first contracts. And then it quickly descended into bickering and arguing, and some may say perhaps by design. But this was a moment where things went off the rails, but it's maybe not the craziest moment. We can talk about that afterwards, but let's just watch.
Tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what.
Now, just for you guys who hadn't seen this, or I always like to give this context for this clip, is that Zelensky was talking about the invasion of Crimea and was saying the reason this war is important is because if Russia effectively is not contained or can just, annex my country, the entire world will, quote, feel the effects. That's what he said. That's what set Donald Trump off, apparently.
Tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this.
what
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
Feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you far more than a lot of
disrespectful to this country. Every time you hear it, there's a new thing that I didn't hear the first time.
People said they should have.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting?
No, this bitch.
This entire meeting, you said thank you. You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation.
He went to Pennsylvania to say thank you.
What'd you say?
He went to Pennsylvania to say thank you. So
he
even
did.
Within that sentence,
did.
Zelensky went to Pennsylvania. He went to a factory that was producing 155 millimeter artillery shells that had recently been opened in Pennsylvania because most American wars have not involved mass artillery strikes. That's not the kind of thing that America has done since like Korea. So it was not. So a lot of these artillery shells have been had to be pulled from old stockpiles, and the 155s are a very, very effective American artillery piece that every time I've gone into the field to an artilleryman, they say this is so much better than anything else. And this factory, which had been opened up in Pennsylvania to make ammunition for it, Zelensky went, but the governor of Pennsylvania, Shapiro was his name? Yeah, was also there. So Vance and a lot of the Republicans interpreted that as Zelensky going on a Democrat campaign stop when visits had also been made to factories elsewhere in red states as well.
Funny. So you're saying they're lying? You're saying somehow the right is twisting a reality that never. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. This is like.
So he literally went to Pennsylvania to say thank you, and now he's saying you did not say thank you, and also Pennsylvania. So nonsense.
Yeah. No, thank you for that context. I was looking it up too, and it was like, no, there was nothing that this was not a campaigning with your enemy. And also like thanking the former administration in Trump's mind and in Vance's mind means absolutely nothing, because Number one, they hate the former administration and they only want their fealty to them. And they also hate, I mean, well, I want your opinion. Let's just finish this.
Yeah, just keep going.
Who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you
He's
can...
not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country's in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No, you've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning.
know.
You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of
Mr.
us.
President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet.
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this
We
cabinet.
gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
Right,
for
that's a
your
lie.
Military equipment.
You
And
voted
you
for
men
your
are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
If you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me-
equipment,
You invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
in 3
okay?
days. I heard it from Putin. In 3 days.
Okay, so I wanted to stop there because I picked up on this last week when it happened. In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. That's very indicative of this entire exchange, that this sounds like something Putin said. I'm trying to save your country, says Trump. What is your reaction to that, Anthony? By the way, we're speaking with Anthony Bartaway of Ukraine Without Hype, and he is speaking to us from Kiev.
So one context for how people in Ukraine saw it, well, a lot of Ukrainians did have a kind of delusion that Trump would change something. A change in presidency would do something different. There's a lot of frustrations with Biden and how a lot of the very vital aid was slow walked, to not get F-16s until a couple months ago. And now they're one of the main things protecting our skies. Many lives would have been saved if we got those sooner. So there's a lot of frustrations with Biden. So a lot of people, especially in like the intelligentsia class, you can call them, were looking forward to something changing. And this really broke a lot of delusions on that. So the word for the Euromaidan revolution in Ukraine is a revolution of dignity. Ukrainians for the last 300 years have been called like stupid dirt poor peasants by the Russians. You're nothing, your culture is worthless, you're just like a poor reflection of us. If you want to be a full-fledged human, you have to learn how to speak Russian and present yourself as a Russian. You can have your silly little Ukrainian dances and eat your pig fat and like listen to your weird village songs all you want, but as soon as you step into civilized society, you have to be a Russian. So this concept of maintaining our dignity as people, to be seen as equals, to not just be an occupied people who do whatever they're told by whoever happens to be in charge, or they'll kill you. That's kind of what a lot of this is about, and really is the core of why Russia invaded. Ukrainians dared to be their own thing. Whereas Russians believe that Ukrainians are just Russians who were tricked into being something different by a conspiracy of the Polish and Austrian nobility. Putin wrote a whole essay about this before the invasion on the historical unity of Ukraine and Russia. So the concept of dignity is probably the number one most important value to Ukrainians. So to have the president go up there and defend Ukrainian dignity, his popularity has soared since then. His since the full-scale invasion, he was at top levels of approval at the beginning, and has faded since then because mistakes have happened. People have got more frustrated with the government, and politics have come back into play. So it kind of dipped down to around like the 58% mark. That sky went much higher, because it meant the president was defending Ukrainian dignity. As for, it's this whole like imperialist idea that Trump has, and transactional idea as well of, if you want us to help you, you're going to be our colony. That's the only way we see any value of you existing. There have been lots of other statements. The Keith Kellogg, the envoy to Ukraine, like the diplomatic envoy, is supposed to be here on a more permanent basis. Just yesterday, he said something along the lines of, sometimes you just have to hit a mule with a 2x4, it gets their attention, or something like that. So just calling Ukrainians animals that you have to beat in order to get them to act appropriately, which is what Russia says about Ukrainians. Only Russia refers to Ukrainians as pigs, not mules, but it gets the same idea.
Now,
so, yeah.
I mean, I think the unspoken thing, I mean, the thing that I spoke about, last week in reacting to this is obviously not the first time that Donald Trump has strong-armed Zelensky. We know that he had strong-armed him, was impeached over strong-arming him, withholding approved aid to Ukraine in order for him to dig up dirt on Joe Biden. Zelensky has been up against this man multiple times, and this man, once again, who is an incredibly chummy relationship with Vladimir Putin, who the only piece of the RNC platform that was ever changed when he ran in 2016 was that if Ukraine was invaded by Russia, the United States would not assist Ukraine. There is a decided Russian colored shadow over Donald Trump, that if you mention you're a conspiracy theorist, you're crazy, you are a Robert Mueller fan, which I am not. I didn't think ever a Republican would ever fucking save us from a clear, in my opinion, Manchurian candidate. I mean, I like, this is the unspoken thing, is like, how compromised is this president and how compromised is the Republican Party?
Yeah, you can kind of trace back a lot of Trump's history through the years, and really, he was a New York real estate guy. And here's the secret of New York real estate, and also Miami real estate and London real estate, is that it's mostly money laundering for shady Russian oligarchs. There has been, especially London has to put into place certain protections where they had this thing that actually just came up. London had to put in a law that made it so you had to identify who's buying an apartment, because some Russian oligarch would invest in an apartment, maybe plant his mistress there or something, but then all money laundering, taking money from the place they stole it from to the place that they could spend it. That's what money laundering is. And America had some of these anti-money laundering laws in place and removed them as of a few days ago. So you can guess why they would want to do that. Just surprise, the real estate industry is all dirty. It's like the art industry in that way. But so Donald Trump had long had these connections. I have my more conspiracy theory ones that connect him to Russian mobster Simon Mogilevich through Rudy Giuliani was especially working with Mogilevich. But
yeah,
you had also Vance, and Vance is really the one that instigated all that. And on an ideological level, Vance is a part of this segment of the new right, fascist right, that essentially sees Russia as, if Russia wins this war, they beat liberalism and therefore can push it back throughout the world. This is, again, going back to my history brain. After the Napoleonic Wars, Russia set itself up as the gendarme of Europe. So as these various liberal revolutions happened in the 19th century of Europe, Russia would send its soldiers in to crush them for whatever European autocrat wanted them to do that. And they kind of want to do that again, where Russia, representing the idea of like these arch conservative autocratic ideals, if they can beat liberalism as represented by Ukraine, it can then spread that reaction further out.
And Ukraine, and not only that, but the desire for Ukraine to be part of, NATO, but also the EU, like Ukraine's desire to be European, and to have these alliances, which are and are not, part of being, like under Russian like aggression, but also are part of, again, to your point, like this broad idea of being in concert with other nations, but also having your own national identity, which I think the EU does, right? In a lot of ways. And I don't want to hurry you along, but I am curious, like, what does this mean? What does the United States truly throwing down with autocrats, with, abdicating from any kind of, international responsibility, from burning bridges with all of our allies, from, cozying up to the Orbans of the world and very clearly saying we don't believe in internationalism, we don't believe in international responsibility, and we don't actually necessarily believe in liberal democracy. We might believe in Orban's illiberal democracy, and democracy, maybe not even that. What does that mean for what does that mean for Europe? And also, what does that mean for Ukraine in terms of like what obviously it seems like Europe is very like, oh, fuck. Like,
Yes.
we don't have a partner anymore. Shit.
Europe is starting to wake up to that. They've said things in the past that didn't fully materialize into real support. Like every once in a while, Macron would say we have to send soldiers to Odessa or something before it's immediately walked back.
Right.
Now they seem to be taking it much more seriously. I've been hearing for people who work with the various Eurocrats and members of European parties that they're actually doing it this time, which is kind of a surprise. They've realized that America has not only abandoned them, but is actively becoming hostile to them. So I don't know if you covered Vance's speech at the Munich Security Conference.
A little bit, very little, but yeah.
Yeah. So he basically was making the argument. He was referring directly to one, supporting Alternative for Germany, Alternative for DOGE-land in Germany, the Nazi Party in Germany, where America is giving direct support to them, and also in Romania, where there's one presidential candidate was disqualified because the Supreme Court in Romania decided that he was basically a Russian plant. There can be
it's amazing how other countries like Romania have more checks and balances against a candidate who seems compromised by a foreign adversary than the United States does. I mean, truly, like anyway.
And there's been more raids since then, where this one supporter of Georgescu was found to like be organizing a coup among a few like weirdo like army Nazis. Right. And that was the other part of his speech, is supporting that part. So these illiberal, far right, outright fascist in some cases, forces within Europe, America is now directly going to be backing them, if not financially, maybe financially, then at least rhetorically. And that is a big threat. For Ukraine, what this all looks like is Europe hopefully will get its act together and do some replacements. Europe does have the economy to outspend Russia in the case of a war of attrition, if they take this seriously enough. And they haven't yet. Maybe they will. Hopefully they will. If not, Ukraine is looking at genocide. The stated goal of Russia is to eliminate Ukrainians as a people, not necessarily directly killing them, but I mean, a lot of the time directly killing them. But being prepared to, one, mass exterminate its intelligentsia, which happens to be my friends. So I'd rather them not all go to I'd probably go to a concentration camp as well in that circumstance. And kids are kidnapped, sent to Russia. The ones that even aren't kidnapped in the occupied territories go through various patriotic education programs where they learn to be good Russian patriots and fighting against the evil homo Nazi Jews of Ukraine. I
mean, this is that's obviously terrifying. And
I bogged down on that.
No, because I guess I just wanted to ask, like, at some point, even though he's his boy, Trump has to negotiate with Putin. At some point, if you're saying that you're going to bring peace, which we know that peace isn't annexing a bunch of land that is not yours and occupying a people or occupying a city, on and on and on. But like, that's the question, is like, what does even a stop to the war on the Russian side? I mean, forget the Ukrainian side. I just mean, like, I don't know if Ukrainians would ever put down their weapons or stop fighting, but like at some point you have to fucking negotiate. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm like,
yes. But then the issue becomes what is a negotiation? And that is one of the things I keep hearing is just sit down and negotiate. Okay. And Like, what do you want there to be negotiated? Like, where are the terms that we're supposed to be? Where are the guarantees? Let's say that everything is frozen along the front lines right now.
Mm-hmm.
What happens then? Russia invades in 5 years.
Right.
They'll stop, rearm, do it again later. Except in that time, because everyone in Ukraine knows that's going to be happening in 5 or 10 years, no one's going to be investing in Ukraine. We'll have these American companies under like the Trump plan of taking all the resources and extracting them and using them for American wealth rather than Ukrainian ones. Even though in the Constitution of Ukraine, it says that the resources of the substrate resources of Ukraine belong to the Ukrainian people and therefore cannot belong to America. But who cares about laws in Trump world? But it then become people can't stay here if they know that they can't raise a child, that they're just going to get bombed again in 5 years. They're all going to try to go to Europe. They're going to try to go to America, but now they can't go to America because Trump is deporting all the Ukrainian refugees.
Yes, he is.
And in that time, the country, it's kind of a death sentence for Ukraine as a country in that case, knowing that they're just a few years away from having to do it all again. You can't raise a family. You can't start a business. You can't do anything because you know that in 5 years, you're probably going to die.
Right.
And you can't live like that.
Right.
And in that time, Russia will be in also the positions that Russia's, like I said, these areas that Russia formerly annexed that they never controlled, he'll be able to, the positioning of those cities means that they'll have a much, much more advantageous position to attack Ukraine in the future. We will not have the Dnipro River defending us again.
Right.
Dnipro River right now, the Russians can't cross that. Like they've tried, it doesn't work. And when it worked the first time around to take Kherson, it was because there was traitors in the Ukrainian intelligence services. That's how they did it.
So, I mean, I think this is all really critical to understand. And there's the reality of, there's what we wish, which is that there is no war. We don't have to, weapons won't stop this war. There's only one bad man. That is the United States empire. But the reality is,
Putin says he would never accept those terms anyway.
Right. Exactly.
Putin, the goal of Russia, I studied this in university. You have positions and you have interests. Your positions are what you say you want. Your interests are your long-term goals. Russia's interest is the destruction of Ukraine as a people.
Yeah.
And he's not going to stop.
Right.
And anyone who replaces Putin will not stop. It's a part of like the Russian national identity to destroy Ukraine almost. That's why they have, before I get into it, that's why they have the name Russia, to justify invading Ukraine, essentially, when they did it 300 years ago.
I mean, this is what's interesting about like the moment. I think we need to really understand as people who, for me, like, and the folks who listen to this show who understand the, ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people very well, especially as Israel and more broadly Israeli society does not, in extremist forms, does not see Palestinians as a people. I think we have to understand that Russian leadership, at least, does not see Ukrainians as a people, right? Like they don't exist. And if they don't exist, then yes, they can be ethnically cleansed and their land can be taken and they can be indoctrinated and on and on and on.
To get even more dark with that, I'll quote this one Russian commander who was videotaped giving a speech holding the skull of a Ukrainian soldier, by the way, to give the full picture of what this is doing. He said that this is not a war. He said this is a war against an idea. And the only way to destroy an idea, the idea of Ukraine, is to destroy the bearers of that idea, to physically destroy the people who hold this idea, which means that anyone who considers themselves Ukrainian under that has to be killed so they cannot pass that idea onward. And the Russian assumption at the beginning of this war, beginning of the full scale, was that most Ukrainians didn't feel that way. They all felt they were just Russians. And if you destroyed like this nationalist middle intelligentsia class, if you just got rid of them, everyone else would fall in line. That turned out not to be the case. And so they have to kill a lot more people than they had originally planned.
Leaving it there. I really appreciate you, Anthony, coming on, and I think that your perspective is critical, and especially being there on the ground. And yeah, I mean, I think we need to start understanding the fact that like there are many imperial powers around this country, and it doesn't justify, it doesn't. We need to eliminate them all. We need to defend national sovereignty wherever it is. Thank you for taking the time, man. Everybody,
Thank you for having me.
where can people listen to you and hear the good work that you and Romeo do?
So long list. I do a lot of jobs right now. So you invited me here on the basis of Ukraine Without Hype. That is, you asked me why we called it that at the beginning, and I never got around to it. I'll say now. So basically, when we were first starting this podcast, it was before the full-scale invasion, and our idea was that a lot of the things people said about Ukraine was sensationalistic and not based on the actual realities of what's happening. So we thought to do like an explainer of like boring news or like boring politics talk about Ukraine, because a lot of the people that like Giuliani got together were like these weirdos that had been cast out of Ukrainian politics years ago. So they would bring up this one guy before American Congress, and all the Ukrainians say, I haven't heard of that guy in like 4 years. Where did you even find this guy?
Right.
So our idea was, if you actually understand Ukrainian politics, you'd be a bit more immune to this. It didn't work, but so that's the naming of Ukraine Without Hype. That is an independent podcast of me and Romeo. That is through patreon.com, Ukraine Without Hype. We've also started a series. We've only done one episode so far of Radio Free America is what we're going to be calling it, about American news.
Nice.
The name coming from Radio Free Europe. It's kind of an inversion, because during the Cold War, Radio Free Europe broadcasted Beyond the Iron Curtain. A lot of people here have like stories of when they're little kids, like hiding under their bed, listening to Radio Free Europe to get news of the outside world. But if the KGB heard you do it, you have your parents taken away from you.
Right.
So our idea is news from the former Soviet bloc going back to America. That's just being cute with it there.
Nice.
We also work with New Voice of Ukraine. Romeo is the editor-in-chief of the English language edition. I do a lot of stuff, including the premium language content. So patreon.com, NVUA. It is a mainstream news outlet in Ukraine. It is one of the bigger magazines. It's actual print media that still exists in places.
Hey,
Surprise.
hey.
Yeah. So it's much, much larger on the Ukrainian side. And our English language side is a smaller team, but we still do good work.
Awesome.
And then I also work for the Kiev Independent at times, where I am the narrator for the documentaries put out by the War Crimes Investigation Unit. Our most recent documentary was about the flood 2 years ago in Kherson, when Russia blew up a dam. And the documentary is about the efforts by the Russians to stop people from getting aid who were flooded on the Russian occupied side of things.
Got it.
So that is what I'm
awesome.
up to. So patreon.com, Ukraine Without Hype, and patreon.com, NVUA. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Thank you so much, Anthony Bartaway. Everybody follow him, check him out, and I hope he stays safe. He just got 2 alerts in the last, what were we, an hour and a half. But, look, I just want to point out something that Aaron Okiano said. There's way too much misinformation, regardless of which country. It has become really bad. And I think that it is important to like really nail down and drill down on that, because we think we know, right? We think we know everything. We think, we understand that every war has a, like it's super, super clear, and it's not. There were a lot of folks who are misinformed. There are a lot of folks who have an agenda. There are folks who, if something doesn't fit into their neat worldview, they get upset and they try to make an issue fit into their neat worldview. And I will be the first to say that Ukraine does not fit into my neat worldview, right? Because I don't know enough about the region. I don't know enough about Russia. And I see the very cynical ways that someone who doesn't give a rat's ass about, other oppressed people will lift up Ukraine. And so, and I don't, again, as I opened with in the beginning of this interview, I don't love the idea of sending, weapons. I don't like that the US is a weapons dealer. But as someone who believes in sovereignty, that believes in, does not believe in empire, no matter who is trying to build one, it is a test of my, principles. And it is a place where I can learn and grow and hear multiple voices and know that maybe some of the folks that I used to trust on some issues don't have the answers or are not the analysts who we should be looking to on this. And if you didn't like what you heard from Anthony, know that I've interviewed other folks. I remember one of the first people I had on. He's also polarized. I mean, he's not also, not saying Anthony's polarizing, but Anatol Levin, who writes for Responsible Statecraft, who's very like, kind of like Ukraine should give up. Like, I mean, and I think he's a serious person, but I've had him on the show early in the war, and I don't agree with him 100%. So all to say, it's important to hear a myriad of voices, and it's important to understand that we don't always know. What I can say is that we need to build these relationships with people on the ground. We need to build international solidarity, whether it's Palestine, whether it's Latin America, whether it's people in Ukraine, right? We need to see all of these things as being linked. And you can do that while also saying, hey, I don't believe in like, and we didn't even talk about NATO as much, which is like its own other thing, but like, I don't, I don't love the idea of having like, blocks of militarized countries that can sort of go to war against one another. Like that's a perfectly fine and normal stance, right? I mean, I think the future of NATO is incredibly tenuous given the fact that the United States under Donald Trump doesn't like NATO, doesn't want to be in NATO, doesn't see the, the point of NATO. So then it's a recalibration of what happens, right? And what is the US's role in the world? And I think that on the left, just like we do with every issue, right? Whether it is healthcare, whether it is climate change, when it comes to foreign policy, it is on us to think about what do we want? What is our vision of the US's role in the world, right? What does that look like? Is it, because it's not a not role. It's not a zero role. It's not isolationism, because isolationism has never been about isolationism. It's right. Isolationism is a right-wing sort of xenophobic project that redirects militarism toward one another, right? It redirects militarism toward women seeking abortions. It redirects militarism to the US-Mexico border. It redirects militarism to fighting cartels. Cool. Good luck with that, right? So I think it really is about what do we want our role to be? And I felt that during the Syrian civil war very strongly. And this is why I think it was a polarizing time, is because the Syrians I spoke to were like, we need help. We're being killed by our own leader. Right. And then you see some of the left and they're like, these removals of children from underneath rubble are being staged. These are actors. And you're like, excuse me? What? Everyone's CIA. What? Everyone's Al-Qaeda. What? Why are you saying Al-Qaeda? Why are you talking about ISIS? I thought you were like a leftist. I thought you were progressive. Like you're buying into the war on what are you doing right now? And again, you can call it, maybe there's more nefarious propagandists at work. I do believe that it to be so. I also think it can be sort of the dead-eyed, dumb leftism that is like the enemy of my enemy is my friend, which is also a terrible take. So again, I just want to make space for just new analysis and understanding like, okay, with all of this, what do we want our role in the world to be? And how do we want our taxpayer money to go out into that world? And for me, number one, I don't want my taxpayer dollars to fund Israeli war crimes. Matter of fact, I don't want my taxpayer dollars to fund war crimes. I'll just leave it at that. Right? So, but if it's going to like making sure that a city in Ukraine doesn't get hit by a Russian missile, I'm cool with that. Like that, I think is good. I love how Anthony's like, you guys had all these tanks that were just sitting there. I'm like, well, fuck, man. If our whole economy is built on war and militarism, better use it. Better have it go to something good, So That's where I come down on that. And you know, you can pigeonhole me one place or another, but good luck, because you won't be able to. I do want to move, because we have more to talk about, and I'm just gonna. I think Anthony's still waiting for his audio to upload. I really appreciated his time. Oh my God, guys, my favorite slash least favorite. So, there is one Democrat who got the move to the center memo in a really just someone. James Carville entered this man from his anus and is now moving his hands with his arms, and he's all about it's the anti-woke left, and somehow we got to really lean in. And that man is Governor of California, Gavin Newsom. Gavin. Matt and I make fun of how his name is the most California ass name, Gavin. Gav. And Gav, who again is basically what if Bruce Wayne was real and like talk like this, except he, didn't do cool shit. Gavin Newsom has decided that he would take time from not fulfilling his promises as governor, like universal single paid healthcare, high-speed railway. He would take time. He would take time away from vetoing harm reduction bills that were passed by the California State Assembly. He would take time out of his busy schedule clearing homeless encampments, because he is absolutely primping and prepping his little Bruce Wayne ass hairstyle for a run at the White House with the most despicable centrist policies. And he would start a podcast, take some time out, and start doing a podcast. And was this podcast in the face of a hostile government takeover, of a hollowing out of the United States and the federal government, of a swift move to a Putin-like kleptocracy where only friends of Trump become rich off of our labor and everything can be just liquidated and sent over to Elon Musk? No. He's not going to stand up against that. He is, in fact, going to lean all the way in and speak with Mr. Charlie Kirk. That's right, guys. Gavin Newsom's first podcast episode is with Charlie Kirk. Now, Charlie Kirk is a 31-year-old head of Turning Point USA, which is basically like a nonprofit think tanky, like campus organization that rails against campuses, against higher education, specifically against what they see basically like racial justice and democracy and gender equality and like LGBTQ people existing, deserving human rights, railing against, for lack of a better term, the wokeism that exists on college campuses, i.e. the knowledge about history and our current moment on college campuses. And he's made a name for himself. Obviously, he's a massive right-wing influencer star. He's got his own podcast. He loves to opine about how many eggs Taylor Swift has left. He's an avowed Christian nationalist. He thinks Halloween is scary and evil. He's literally said that. And somehow his facial features get smaller and smaller on his big ass head every single day. So that is Charlie Kirk. And this is Gavin Newsom. And I'm just going to play 3 clips from this interview. I did listen, and let me just say, it's awful. It's at every moment where you think Gavin Newsom could push back or say something, he couches even the smart things he says in a capitulative, like he is sitting, like someone told him that this is your late night show and you're here and you're helping, Dakota Fanning promote her new TV show. Like someone told him that he's going to do softball interviews with celebrities. JK, the celebrities are going to be the biggest mouthpieces on the right. And his first interview, of course, was with Charlie Kirk. And he starts off by admitting in a very long and gushing monologue that his 13-year-old son is a massive Charlie Kirk fan. Wild.
Last night, trying to put my son to bed. He's like, no, Dad, what time's Charlie going to be here? What time? And I'm like, dude, you're in school tomorrow. He's 13. He's like, no. This morning, wakes up at 6 something. He's like, I'm coming. I'm like, he literally would not leave the house.
Did you let him take off school?
No, he did. Of course not. He's not here for a good reason. But the point is,
you canceled school for like 2 years. One day.
The point is the point, which is you are making a damn dent.
Thank you. I'm kidding.
When you go to these college campuses, I love
Okay. This is insane. Hang on.
watching your TikTok, which is
Thank
next
you.
level. And clearly, that's expressed by my 13-year-old son.
I want to meet this guy.
Yeah, I actually
He's
am
coming to a Turning Point event this summer, Tampa, Florida, Student Action Summit.
I actually am by the way, if
You should be concerned.
But actually, let me say here is why I'm concerned, because you have expressed that I should be concerned as a Democrat, that we're getting
true. Okay.
clobbered.
Yes.
That you've figured something out.
It's not me. The president first deserves the credit.
But why? No, hold on. You were at this before Trump was Trump.
I know, but
he was a Democrat back in 2011
yeah,
and 12.
the president deserves huge credit. And I just have to say that as an obligatory thing, because without him, our movement would be small. And you can appreciate that in politics. You have to appreciate the person who is the catalyst.
For you, that's what you sort of attached an identity.
It was also
with
just a catalyst. It was a cultural moment that just opened us up.
I have to just, give it up to Mein Führer. Like first and foremost, first is God, aka Donald Trump. I can't even express how gross it is that Gavin Newsom has a perpetual smile and is giving him props, but evil props. Like, man, you're like out there, you're making a day, you're making it possible, even though I completely disagree with everything that you stand for, allegedly, or maybe I don't, but I don't know. But it's about the brand. It's about brand recognition. You got that brand recognition. My son wants to meet you, and he said, Dad, and yes, and I'm concerned, but tell me how we're getting clobbered. Like, look, I've seen the filleting of Charlie Kirk by so-called progressives, Democrats. This is like a deep throat operation. This is truly next level, and it doesn't get better. It is awful. And they choose, the cold open is like basically the clip that happens at the very beginning to get you sort of interested in it. They chose the clip of the cold open to be Gavin Newsom admitting to Charlie Kirk that his 13-year-old son loves Charlie Kirk. Like, we're fucked, guys. We're so fucked. Like, you claim to stand up for women's rights. You claim to stand up for gay rights. You're talking to someone who is a mascot for everything reactionary about this moment, for tearing those things down. And you're admitting that you're not your son doesn't look up to you. He's not excited to meet, progressives or leftists. He doesn't listen to Hassan Piker. I don't know, man. He listens to Charlie effing Kirk. Like, super surprising, but also low-key not surprising at all, right? A little bit like that checks out. Gavin Newsom is an elitist. Gavin Newsom doesn't actually care about the things he stands for. It is a brand for Gavin effing Newsom. It always has been a brand for Newsom. He'll pivot, and I gotta say, if there's New Yorkers listening or Floridians listening, you guys have terrible Democrats. You really do. Obviously AOC, there's outliers on, you know what I'm saying. But like, California Democrats are such a specific type of elitist spinelessness. I don't even know how to express myself. Like Kamala, and it's not about spinelessness. It's about, I don't stand for really anything, but I'll just be what you want me to be and say the right things when you need me to say them. And I truly won't stick my neck out. We're not talking about Midwestern Democrats. These aren't your Tim Wallses, okay? They haven't done the concrete thing. When they have their super majorities in fucking their state assemblies, they're not passing legislation that their state wants, right? Minnesota has California beat when it comes to the amount of progressive legislation. And yes, we've got some good things here. Okay, we do have an expansive Medi-Cal system. We do have, I believe, a rollout of a universal pre-K system, but that shit ain't here. I can tell you that much as someone who's paying way too much for daycare right now. But like, it is not nearly as comprehensive for the number of Democrats and the amount of support. This is a state that went to Bernie Sanders, y'all. This is a state that went to Bernie Sanders in 2020. Okay, so like this is they do not meet the moment. And let's just keep going. There's a couple of so that was that, and then of course, because of course, right? There is a moment where Charlie Kirk asks Gavin Newsom, why doesn't he take a stand against the scourge of trans athletes? You guys, you know what? How many times has a trans athlete ruined your day? Never, but probably, maybe, if you think about it. If you think about it a little bit. So listen to Charlie Kirk basically understand he's got Gavin Newsom from the beginning of this interview in the palm of his fucking hand, and he's going to use it to hit the same marginalized communities and you do the same distracting things that the right always wants to do. Remember, it's the right that's talking about trans athletes, not the left. It's the right, not the left. It's the right, not the left. You think we care? You think we're fine? We're way more interested in access to universal healthcare, housing, a Green New Deal, stopping corporations from charging you whatever the fuck, owning a home in our lifetimes. Trans rights or human rights is in the broad swath of things we fight for, but we're not trans athletes number one. Why? There's just not that many of them. And this is what Gavin Newsom says.
You're talking to me about people.
Yeah.
It's like you right now should come out and be like, you know what? The young man who's about to win the state championship in the long jump in female sports,
right.
that shouldn't happen. You as the governor should step out and say no.
No, and I appreciate
but like, would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. It is.
I can't with this guy. I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you like that. Charlie Kirk not only is like got the governor of fucking California, the stalwart, the resistance, our beacon, the one who's going to step to MAGA, the one who gets to debate Ron DeSantis now, who's looking like a bigger bitch than Ron DeSantis. And that is a really tall task. I mean, it's tall in, his little man heels that he wears. It's hard to look like a bigger bitch than Ron DeSantis. And Gavin Newsom gets there with this answer. Charlie Kirk just misgendered a trans girl, a teen in high school who's doing the long jump, because we all watch the long jump in this high school sporting event, the female long jump, y'all. That's way more important than a teen girl being raped and then forcibly made to carry that rapist child and raise that rapist child, right? He says, okay. Yeah, no, I think it is an issue of fairness. Men in women's sports. He literally said that and he agreed to the fucking framing. Gavin, man, you've been around enough libs. You've been around enough luncheons. You know what the word cis means. You know what the word trans means. Come on now. You've been indoctrinated by us crazy wokies to know to have a little bit more fucking respect for the trans community than that. Truly, though. And then it gets worse because he says, oh, yeah, you're right. It's an issue of fairness. And then
it is an issue of fairness.
So
it's deeply unfair.
Would you speak out against this young man, A.B. Hernandez, who right now is going to win the state championship in the long jump?
Boy, did I saw how you guys were able to weaponize that issue at another level.
Not weaponize. That's
well, weaponize may be pejorative. You're right. But you were able to
shine a light on,
highlight it in a way that, frankly, there are not that many out. We're talking about, I think, the NC2A, 510,000? No, but I just didn't realize.
It's 890 medals and trophies that we know of in the last 5 years. That's
no, so I'm going to, let me.
800, I mean, if you include, the crawling champion with those toddlers we saw, we're not really sure how many of those toddlers were actually male toddlers posing as female toddlers. And we all know that when it comes to crawling capacity, the male body is far more limber, and just the femur length is so long that men can crawl much faster. Baby men can crawl much faster. So you see Gavin trying. He's attempting. He's like, I mean, I saw you the way you were able to weaponize. He's like, don't weaponize. Don't say weaponize. Like, oh, you're right. I guess I mean, utilize. Like, this bitch is walking away from everything.
Step back, say completely fair on the issue of fairness. I completely agree. So that's easy to call out, the unfairness of that. There's also a humility and a grace, that these poor people are more likely to commit suicide, have anxiety and depression. And the way that people talk down to vulnerable communities is an issue that I have a hard time with as well. So both things I can hold in my hand.
The way you can talk down to the trans community, like, you can't, number one, you couldn't even say, did you say trans? Yeah, I don't think you could say trans, but you could just say it, doesn't matter. And you're not going to, turn to dust. They do exist, but by you not saying the trans community makes them feel invisible. And so it's easier to legislate against them, to hurt them, to maim them, because you can't even say the word trans. Can you say the word abortion? Because Joe Biden couldn't. So notice that, right? And then he's like, these poor people, the way people talk down to them. You mean like you just did? I mean, the way you're doing it now when you're like, oh, it's an issue of fairness. Just say, there's a way to say this. Say, look, you guys make a mountain out of a molehill. There are only 5 trans athletes in the NCAA or whatever it is. I'm more concerned about X, Y, Z. I'm more concerned about, again, women and girls being denied their basic fundamental rights that was stripped from them, a 75-year hard-fought right. Here's what I'm doing. Here's how we're coming back. What is this right now? What is this consultant bullshit that we're seeing right now?
How can we address this issue with the kind of decency that I think, is inherent in you, but not always expressed on the issue?
No, I get it.
At the same time, deal with the unfairness.
The decency that is inherent in you who rubs elbows with the Nick Fuentes, you who rubs elbows with the Daily Wire, and the same kinds of mouthpieces like Michael Knowles, who says transgenderism should be eradicated from public life. You've got decency? Oh no, I don't think so. So that's it's like so upsetting. And then finally, there's a little bit more about lastly, I think this is where he talks about higher education, because Newsom's trying to be like, okay, well, like, what about, colleges, and don't you believe in school?
Anybody any good?
No.
And in fact, it creates a very weak political movement,
right,
which I think plays into one of the reasons why we were able to steamroll you guys back in November, is that once there's a little opposition against a group of people that have never actually trust of institutions, where the left is high trust of institutions, we're the ones that challenge the COVID vaccine, we're the ones that think that public health authorities might have lied to us during COVID,
right,
we're the ones that don't necessarily believe the government when it says that we should keep on sending money to Ukraine. Again, that's a general rule. There are some exceptions to that.
Right.
But when you go to college, you are trained to trust the experts, trust the scientists, trust the people that are leaders of authority. And the Democrat Party is largely the gate.
Trust the people who've studied issues for 20, 30 years. Trust the authors. Trust the scientists. Trust people who read data, understand how graphs work. Trust the people who've traveled, trust the people who speak 3 languages so they know what Ukrainians are saying or whatever, trust the books. I haven't read a book, and I don't even know what a book is. And a Libra, right? Like, why do you don't even need knowledge in a Libra, right? It's a weird thing to do, and so it's all the trust of the establishment when you go to the Libra, right? Like, what the fuck are you getting away with saying to this guy right now?
Gatekeepers of that kind of ideological and intellectual regime.
It's interesting. And so from your perspective, I mean, as you advocate for people to sort of open up a worldview that is life without a 4-year degree and all the opportunities that present themselves anew in that respect, are you arguing for the disestablishment, the end of higher education.
I think it's going to
systems that we
happen no
know-
matter what. I mean, and in 10 years, artificial intelligence is going to change everything.
Yeah.
And I don't know what.
So what are you going to do about it? What's going to happen to working people? What's going to happen to your voters? What is going to happen when people are losing their jobs? Do you believe in joining a union? Should people be displaced by AI? Push back, Gavin. He doesn't have it in him because he isn't that.
These 4-year degrees are actually doing to prepare these kids for that. But no, as far as like, am I advocating for the end of the pursuit of learning? Of course not. That's one of my big critiques is that at a lot of these schools, they're not pursuing what is good, true, and beautiful. It's become the oppression Olympics and a weaponized complaint seminar of people sitting in the circle and finding out who's been offended the most that day. That's not doing anybody any good.
No.
And in fact, it creates a very weak political movement, which I think plays into one of the reasons why we were able to steamroll you guys back in November, is that once there's a little opposition against a group of people that have never actually been, had to build the muscle mass of a very difficult and unpredictable world. Whereas those of us that are conservatives, we're insulted all the time. So think about the experience of a kid on a college.
We're insulted all of the time. Why won't you stand for me? These Democrats won't stand and give me an applause line. Oh, you're so rude. We must censure you. I hereby, everybody in the Congress shall abide by the decorum rules of the Congress, and 77-year-old Al Green, who is shaking his cane, shall be removed, even though low these 4 years ago, a bunch of red-pilled ass boat dads shat on Nancy Pelosi's desk. Like, these are the most fragile people. Are you kidding me? They don't understand. Okay, now I'm just getting mad at Charlie Kirk. Okay, Charlie Kirk is catching strays here because ultimately I want to direct this at Gavin Newsom, but I gotta just say to Charlie Kirk, my answer to that would be like, I'm sorry, have you faced down a police line? Has a police officer ever beat you? Have you ever been pepper sprayed? Have you ever had a car run into your protests? Yeah, I didn't fucking think so. You have no idea what it's like to be on the receiving end of state violence. You have no clue. You are the weakest, most, do you know who my fucking father is? Dumbass, except you didn't go to school. Like, you think that's a badge of honor? This is what I want from my governor. This is what I want. Sensoria Maria says, this is expected of our progressive governor, but I do not want any Californians in the chat. I do want any Californians in the chat to know there's a grassroots initiative to move our state out of the U.S. Republic, similar to Maine. That's right. We talked about that. Actually, I don't know if we've talked about that. Maybe we'll do that next Wednesday. Very important to know. Yes, there is a movement to secede. Let's do it. Snack Panther says wealthy left-wingers do stuff like Gavin, then wag their fingers about purity tests. Yeah. Linda Martinson, I can't believe this world we live in. So happy there are a few people in the U.S. that are saying, keep up the good work, Francesca. Thanks so much. Oddly Magical Brandy, it's important to remember that this is Gavin's show and Charlie Kirk was the first guest. The masks are off. I mean, I truly think that Gavin Newsom is the type of centrist dumbass. Like, he is actually that stupid and naive that he thinks this is a good look for him. And he thinks that people are going to respond to this. And he thinks that this is important and this is a good strategy. That's what it is. He doesn't care about the fact that, again, as we talked about on Tuesday with Anat, that the number one thing that happened in the 2024 election is that people stayed home. Donald Trump didn't even get 50% of the popular vote. Again, a runoff in many countries. Hello. Rachel Atwood, Cenk is going to endorse Gavin in 2028. Quote me now. I cannot wait. I mean, I think Cenk's, okay, to Cenk's credit, he has not talked as much shit about Gavin as Anna has, like, which is so funny because this sort of appeal to the right wingers, find the common ground, the left has gone too far, blah, blah, blah. Is, I think, like, Anna's on that train, you know what I'm saying? Cenk, I think, has always wanted Gavin Newsom to actually join the, Cenk likes Gavin. Cenk likes Gavin Newsom. Anna thinks that Gavin Newsom is like too friendly to the unhoused population, like, you know, or that he's like not a good Democrat. You know what I mean? She was pro recalling Gavin Newsom. Cenk endorsed Rick Caruso, billionaire Republican in LA, for mayor, but he never went as far as to endorse like Larry Elder in the recall against Gavin Newsom. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like there's a little bit of a, but yes, oh my God. The fact that the centrists are all getting along and doing the same thing that's going to get them nowhere is so funny to me. My little evil grin is like, I'm sorry. It's just so stupid. It's so stupid. Oh, there's so much to talk about. By the way, kind of speaking of Russia, Paige just dropped this to me right before we went live. Exclusive, Rolling Stone. New DOGE staffer has ties to a sanctioned Russian oligarch. That's fun. Sam Korkos, a new member of Elon Musk's doggy team, reportedly showed up at the IRS demanding detailed info about American taxpayers to hunt for fraud. Oh no, I've got to subscribe. God damn it, people. Hang on, let me just find a free login and I'll get back to you. I'm such a zero. Okay, no, I got around it. I got around it. There's a new staffer in DOGE seeking access to sensitive data at the IRS, and his family has ties to a sanctioned Russian oligarch. The Washington Post recently reported the two DOGE representatives, Gavin Klieger and Sam Korkos, have been at the IRS seeking private taxpayer information in unprecedented ways that would violate our current IRS privacy law. Korkos demanded a detailed taxpayer and vendor information when he arrived at the IRS headquarters late last week, according to the Post. IT workers at the agency initially refused based on Korkos' lack of background in tax checks. And by the end of the day, Klieger and Korkos were discussing the idea of an omnibus agreement that would allow agencies across the government to access taxpayer data and use it to hunt for instances of fraud. Acting IRS Commissioner Melanie Krause has signaled openness to DOGE's demands. Why? According to reports, the IRS typically closely guards taxpayer data, with federal law prohibiting the agency from sharing it with other agencies. Violations of taxpayer privacy law carry both civil and criminal liability. And if you guys hadn't seen, or if you're listening and you haven't seen the latest interview that America Unhinged, my show on Zateo, did with Jonathan Kramen, I think his last name is, excuse me. He worked in cybersecurity at the va.gov, and he spoke to us basically about why it is so important to not have data sharing between government agencies. It is to protect our privacy as citizens, that if one government agency has our information, there's no need to share that with another. They have their own database, and if they need our information, they will explicitly ask for it because it is a part of, I don't know, an investigation or cross-referencing, whatever it is. That is on a need-to-know basis. But the broad sharing of our social security numbers, of our information, does not happen because, again, the government doesn't act like Facebook. You know what I'm saying? But they want to. They definitely want to start acting like it. They want to try. So back to the article. You should definitely watch that, by the way. The Post didn't provide additional information about Korkos' background identity, but he is the CEO of a healthcare company that has multiple ties to Musk's SpaceX company. New York Times reported that Korkos is the CEO of the health startup company Levels. A career federal employee confirmed Korkos' identity to Rolling Stone and said Korkos has been embedded at the Treasury Department. Korkos, 36, founded Levels in 2019 with former SpaceX lead engineer Dr. Casey Means. Means is a holistic doctor with ties to Robert F. Kennedy. Korkos' brother interned at SpaceX, according to his social media accounts. Levels received seed and Series A funding from Andreessen Horowitz. Again, all these people are connected. A venture capital firm led by Trump donor Mark Andreessen. Levels described itself as a, quote, metabolic health company using continuing glucose monitors to help people make healthier choices. Korkos's wife, Varvara Ruskova-Korkos, spent 3 years at the VC firm GVA Capital, which was previously exposed as a vehicle for one of the richest oligarchs in Russia, Suleiman Kerimov, to funnel his money into various American companies. An investigation by the San Francisco Standard detailed the elaborate web of shell companies used by GVA to distribute $28 million of Kerimov's money into Bay Area investments in 2015 and 2016, revealed in court filings and offshore company databases. Kerimov's money flowed to various companies via GVA Capital from a Delaware trust called Heritage Trust. The U.S. Treasury blocked the trust and made its funds inaccessible in 2022, saying it was created to obscure Kerimov's interests in U.S.-based assets. Heritage Trust was also how Kerimov invested into SpaceX itself in 2017, holding what was then 1% of the company, as he continued to hold the stake even after he was first sanctioned by the U.S. government in 2018. So again, it seems like this DOGE staffer's wife worked for a company that was a shell company for this Russian oligarch. But like, that's also, we also just learned that the Russian oligarch is invested in SpaceX. Like, again, it doesn't matter. They'll take money from anybody. You want some data? Here you go. Take it. We're selling it. You want access to American voters? You want to help change our opinions about the war in Ukraine? Did that Zelensky meeting sort of not leave a good taste in some Americans' mouth? Here, have some information. Propagandize, my guy. I don't know. Like, again, it doesn't really matter. Money is money to these folks. And if it comes from a Russian oligarch, so be it. But the fact that he's invested also in SpaceX is pretty revealing. Turns out, though, there's a little bit of trouble in Trump land. Trouble in Trump land, people. This dropped today. This was the biggest news. An explosive meeting where Trump officials clashed with Elon Musk. Now, we remember that on Tuesday, Donald Trump, at his joint address, clapped and gave all the accolades to Elon Musk. There he was, Elon wearing a suit, and said that he is the head of DOGE. Now, remember, clearly there's disagreement inside the Trump administration, either legally, either, whomever. Someone is like, don't say Elon is the head of DOGE. He can't be the head of DOGE. He's a special government employee. He's not been nominated by and confirmed by the Senate. You can't do that. Let's not say he's the head. Trump gave away that game, and we all knew that the game was being played. Of course, Elon is the head of DOGE. And so I don't know. Maybe that had something to do with this meeting. Let's read. This is from Maggie Haberman. Still there, still trying to get on the inside scoop. Also Jonathan Swan, who I really like. Marco Rubio was incensed. Here he was in the cabinet room of the White House, the Secretary of State, seated behind the president and listening to a litany of attacks from the richest man in the world. Seated diagonally opposite across the elliptical mahogany table, Elon Musk was letting Mr. Rubio have it, accusing him of failing to slash his staff. You fired nobody, Mr. Musk told Mr. Rubio, and then scornfully added that perhaps the only person he had fired was a staff member from Mr. Musk's department of DOGE. Rubio has been privately furious with Mr. Musk for weeks, ever since his team effectively shuttered an entire agency that was supposedly under Mr. Rubio's control, the USAID, obviously. Remember when there was a moment at the beginning, guys, when Rubio was like, I'm head of the USAID, okay? Or no, this other guy is. Like, there was, Rubio's abroad, right? Rubio went to El Salvador, because, of course, why? Is in El Salvador, the cuts and the crazy like barrage of attacks on USAID begin, and Rubio's like, I'll be the head of the USAID. Clearly, he didn't like that USAID was number one on the chopping block. In the extraordinary cabinet meeting on Thursday in the front of the President Trump and around 20 others, details of which have not been reported before, Mr. Rubio got his grievances off his chest. Mr. Musk was not being truthful, Rubio said. What about the more than 1,500 State Department officials who took early retirement and buyouts? Did they not count as layoffs? He asked sarcastically whether Mr. Musk wanted him to rehire all those people just so he could make a show of firing them again. Then he laid out his detailed plans for reorganizing the State Department, this is all very funny to be like, oh, I did. What do you call the people that took buyouts? I totally fired people. Like, yeah, they're fighting, but nothing substantive. It's just who looks better in front of daddy. Mr. Musk was unimpressed. He told Mr. Rubio he was, quote, good on TV. Is he? I think he's pretty bad. Anyone can be better than Elon. We understand that. With the clear subtext being he was not good for much else. Throughout all of this, the president sat back in his chair, arms folded, as if he were watching a tennis match. Yeah, see, that was the other thing about the Ukraine meeting. Trump doesn't get animated for much. We've seen him. He's very tired, very slouchy, very let Elon do everything. So not only was the Ukraine meeting telling because of what he said and how he said it, but that he was so animated. You're like, oh, we found the one issue that Donald Trump actually really cares about, which is protecting his buddy Putin, defending him, getting really mad at Zelensky. How dare you get me impeached that first time? It was a perfect phone call. So it's very funny because it's true. Like, he really is check the fuck out, all the way out. After the argument dragged on for an uncomfortable time, Mr. Trump finally intervened to defend Rubio as doing a great job. Mr. Rubio has had a lot to deal with, the president said. He's very busy. He's always traveling and on TV, and he has an agency to run. So everyone just needs to work together. The meeting was a potential turning point after the frenetic first weeks of Mr. Trump's second term. It yielded the first significant indication that Mr. Trump was willing to put some limits on Musk, whose efforts have become the subject of several lawsuits, of course. Thursday's meeting was abruptly scheduled on Wednesday evening was a sign Mr. Trump was mindful of the growing complaints. He tried to offer each side something by praising both Musk and his cabinet secretaries. Okay, that doesn't do shit, you dumbass. Like, you can't just be like, you're both good. I both love you. I've done this before between all of my children. I love them all equally except Tiffany, who I love less. Barron is the tallest. He gets the most love. Don't fight children. Like, this is what but you actually have to have a plan for how they're going to govern. At least one, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who has had tense encounters related to Mr. Musk's team, was not present. The president made it clear he still supported the mission of the Musk initiative, but now was the time, he said, to be a bit more refined in its approach. From now on, he said secretaries would be in charge and the Musk team would only advise. It is unclear what the long-term impact of the meeting will be. Mr. Musk remains Mr. Trump's biggest political financial supporter. Just this week, his super PAC aired $1 million worth of ads that said, "Thank you, President Trump." And Mr. Musk's control of the social media website X has made the administration staff members and cabinet secretaries alike fearful that he will target them in public. That's nothing to worry about. But if nothing else, the session laid bare the tensions within Mr. Trump's team, and the news of the sharp clashes spread quickly throughout senior ranks of cabinet agencies after it was over. This account is based on interviews with 5 people of knowledge of the events. Mr. Trump on social media said instead of using a hatchet, he's going to use a scalpel. A clear reference to Mr. Musk's scorched earth approach. Musk apparently wore a suit in the meeting. Just moments before the blow up with Rubio, Musk and the Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy went back and forth about the state of the FAA and its equipment for tracking airplanes and what kind of fix was needed. Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, jumped in to support Mr. Musk. Shut the fuck up, Howard Lutnick. Shut the fuck up. Mr. Duffy said, the young staff of Mr. Musk's team was trying to lay off air traffic controllers. What am I supposed to do? Mr. Duffy said. I have multiple plane crashes to deal with now, and your people want me to fire air traffic controllers. Okay, Mr. Duffy, but you're so irrelevant. Nobody even knows what the real world is, okay? Do you even know who Baby Gronk is? I'm sorry, I don't. I'm just trying to think of a young reference. I don't know. I was looking at that video the other day. I love that this is Sean Duffy. Please tell your tweens to stop firing the FAA air traffic controllers. What am I supposed to do? And we've got more on that because this is before this happened, by the way. Oh my God, the wreckage of the plane in the Potomac. I can't, it's so fucking heartbreaking. Mr. Musk told Mr. Duffy that his assertion was a lie. Mr. Duffy insisted it was not, and he had heard it from them directly. Mr. Musk, asking who had been fired, said, "Give me their names. Tell me their names." Oh my God. No. Mr. Duffy said there were not any names because he'd stopped them from being fired. At another point, Mr. Musk insisted people hired under DEI were working in control towers. Mr. Duffy pushed back, and Mr. Musk did not add details, but said during the long back and forth that Mr. Duffy had his phone number and should call him if he had any issues to raise. Who is the president right now? Like, seriously, though, you're in a meeting to clarify that the secretaries are actually in charge of the departments to which they were confirmed somehow. And Elon saying, "Call me, all sorted out." No, I don't care how much money you have. I don't care that your hair plugs and your scalp operation worked on you. You can't do that. This is bad, y'all. This is going to be very bad. The exchange ended with Mr. Trump telling Duffy that he had to hire people from MIT as air traffic. I thought we didn't believe in higher education. Isn't that all bullshit? You want to hire woke people now? MIT? Like, this is so, like, I want all the Rhodes Scholars to be air traffic controllers. All the, he said, geniuses. Like, I understand that for a guy who's never worked a goddamn day in his life, has never trained for absolutely anything in his life, it's like, do you think people with high IQs, which again, let's pretend it's not a debunked, way of measuring intellect, but do you think people with high IQs are like, I just know how planes fly. I just direct them in my mind. Like, we need to get only Russell Crowe's from Beautiful Mind. What do you think these people are? Matt Damon in Good Will Hunting, him. We just need a lot of the Matt Damons. He went to MIT, right? Or he was, that was about MIT. This is so pathetic. Anthony is still listening and watching and says, yes, Reagan already went after the air traffic controllers the right way, the neoliberal way, which is attacking them when they want to go on strike for better wages. That is the correct, good Republican way to go after traffic controllers, which, by the way, Anthony, is so funny because, at a time when like Alyssa Slotkin gives the rebuttal to, Donald Trump's joint address and she brings up Reagan's name 5 times, even though, yes, Reagan's one of the biggest legacies was him breaking the air traffic controllers strike. What do you think that did to the whole industry? Anyway, Doug Collins, again, Secretary of Veterans Affairs, has been dealing with one of the most politically sensitive challenges of all the cabinet secretaries. Mr. Musk's cuts will affect thousands of veterans. Mr. Collins made the point they should not wield the blunt instrument and cleave off everyone from the VA. They need to be strategic about it. Mr. Trump agreed with Mr. Collins, saying they ought to retain the smart ones and get rid of the bad ones. I swear to fucking God. In response to a request for comment from the New York Times, Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, said in a statement, as Mr. President said, this was a great and productive meeting amongst the members of his team to discuss cost-cutting measures and staffing across the federal government. Everyone is working as one to help President Trump deliver on his promise to make our government more efficient. Okay, so there's trouble in paradise, but not as much trouble as what SpaceX is currently going through. I mean, the people who want to safely fly in the air are going through, because just yesterday, a SpaceX test flight exploded into flame and debris was all over the place to the point where flights had to be grounded. It's the second time in 2 months, according to the Washington Post. that flights had to be grounded because of a SpaceX explosion. Guys, look at this. If you're listening, just a bunch of on fire debris headed to Earth. Nothing to really worry about. It was Starship's eighth flight test and follows another failed flight in January. Although SpaceX notched a partial win by safely landing its rocket booster for the third time. Yeah, we got that down. How about the not exploding the part that's supposed to go somewhere? It's very funny. Like, cool. You did not even really half of it. Like, the rocket booster doesn't, I mean, it's cool that I don't fucking know, but I'm like, isn't the point to go into space? The rocket booster landing safely is like, it's on the ground. It's Earth. We already been on Earth. Aren't you supposed to go to Mars? Why wasn't he on this flight? That's my question. It's the largest rocket ever built, consisting of the Super Heavy rocket and the Starship spacecraft. It's essential to Musk's vision of reaching Mars and to NASA's plan for returning to the moon under the Artemis program. At the FAA, poor Sean Duffy, my guy, I give him like 2 more months. I give him 2 more months, 4 more crashes, and he's gone. He's out. He's like, I'm just going to reboot Real World. Let's just no more of this. They said in a statement after the explosion Thursday that it's requiring SpaceX to perform a mishap investigation. And it said it activated a debris response area and briefly slowed aircraft around the area where the space debris was falling. That was multiple cities, by the way. This article doesn't go into it, but it was with multiple cities and flights were grounded for like a few hours. Maybe 130 flights, I believe it was, were grounded because there was debris falling from the sky. And we wonder why the head of the FAA, former head of the FAA, who resigned once Trump came into power, had such a big falling out with Elon. Maybe because his fucking space debris was endangering commercial airline traffic. So things are going well for Doggy, guys. Just so you know, things are going real well for Doggy. I guess the Athena. Oh no, yeah. Well, you know. Here's the thing, guys. What's important to know about space is that you and your family should die in order to exploit it and in order to explore it, okay? That you, your family, your neighbor's family, your whole community really should die and suffer. They should die of preventable diseases. They should drink contaminated water with poo-poo in it. They should die of sepsis when they're not able to get an abortion. They should die because they're not able to get a social security check, and they're therefore not able to live indoors. So they have to, they are homeless. They should die because they rely on SNAP benefits and they will not eat and are malnourished and may die early because of it. They should die because one day Elon's rocket might make it a couple 100 miles more into space before exploding. So I feel like you haven't thought about that. And actually, you're not being grateful. And like, I haven't even heard anyone say thank you this whole time. Jesus Christ. It doesn't end with Doge. It doesn't end. It's everywhere. Doge also, by the way, was part of the massive water release in the Central Valley of California. 2 billion gallons of water were released unnecessarily by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers because Doggy told them to do it. It flooded a whole area that didn't even need the water. And now farmers who could have relied on that water don't have it. You guys, you realize it's the so-called rainy season here in Southern California? Yeah, I know we just had a fire, but like we have had some rain. So, but I'm so glad Gavin is interviewing Charlie Kirk. We just have to come together. Oh my God, I really have to bring back my airhead for this moment. I'm definitely going to do another airhead video. My little MAGA bimbo. Things aren't going so well for Cybertruck owners, y'all. I don't know if you have had this experience and you're driving along in your automobile, my baby beside me at the wheel, and you see a Cybertruck or a Tesla, and there is a deep part of your soul that wants to tail this car, that wants to drive dangerously close to it. Why? Why do you have this psychopathic urge to get mad at just someone who's driving? Why would you do that? Why would you endanger your life? I wouldn't, but I thought about it. I don't advocate doing it, but I thought about it. I've wanted to, given that Elon is the worst thing to happen to our country. I don't know, since Trump, and now with Trump, really bad. We're on the wrong timeline, people. But nevertheless, people are in fact acting on their best or worst impulses and defacing Cybertrucks everywhere. You've seen it, you know it, maybe you've done it. This is someone who wrote "fuck Elon" on a Cybertruck. I'm gonna take you through. Here's someone drew a swastika on a Cybertruck. Oh, I think I know exactly where this is parked. This is downtown Manhattan. I think I was arrested right on here. Sorry, that's a random. Okay, so someone drew. That's a solid tag. I mean, I don't like drawing swastikas, but you know their point was. Here's someone. This is a fully defaced Cybertruck. Fuck Trump. Fuck Trump. Real cyberpunk. I actually think that the Cybertruck looks better defaced. That's just me. Like, don't you think it should be defaced? Like, it's giving the whole steampunk vibe that it kind of already gives off. Here's another one. Fuck Musk. Somebody defaced a swastika, somebody said. So they're happening, right? People are defacing Cybertrucks. Tesla owners, who, are it's like the Cybertruck owners who recycle, Tesla owners some of them are changing the make and model. They're taking the T/the uterus off of it's not really a uterus. It's more of an IUD. They're taking the IUD off of their cars and replacing it with another logo, which is hilarious to me. But where I am going with this is that some people, are trying to get the defacement of a Cybertruck classified as a hate crime. This is so funny to me. And no, this is not an initiative. There's no formal legislation, but there definitely will be at some point. I just love this. This at this point is a whiny Facebook post. A guy named Mike Miller, who said, with all the hate going on against Teslas now, yes, all the hate against Teslas. You took the words right out of my mouth. I decided to write our congressman. I highly encourage all of you to do the same. Just in the news today, they burnt down an entire Tesla charging station in Boston, Massachusetts. And it seems that many of the Bay Area Tesla service centers are being infiltrated with protesters daily, vandalizing brand new Teslas and harassing customers. Here's what I wrote. Dear Congressman Garamendi, I'm writing to seek your assistance in addressing the growing harassment, hostility, and violence directed toward Tesla owners across California and the United States. I've personally experienced multiple alarming incidents. Okay, wait. Oh, he drives a Tesla. Okay. I was like, if he doesn't drive a Tesla, but is doing the a poo meme and stepping in for Tesla owners, that'd be insane. On one occasion, while driving on I-80, another driver deliberately attempted to run me off the road. In another unsettling encounter, while washing my car in my own driveway, a stranger drove up, hurled insults at me, and then left while running stop signs. Reviewing my HOA security footage. Oh, yes. Yes. I love, Karen Queens, who love to start their sentences with reviewing my HOA security footage. Every Nextdoor user is just touching themselves right now. I confirmed that this individual had never been in my neighborhood before, making it clear that I was specifically targeted. Beyond my personal experiences, I'm a member of several Tesla owner forums where widespread reports of similar attacks are being shared. Owners are facing physical threats, vandalism, and intimidation because of their vehicle choice. Reports in the media highlight incidents of Tesla charging stations being burned. I urge you to consider legislative action that would increase penalties for these acts, potentially classifying them as hate crimes or enhancing legal consequences for individuals who engage in such behavior. No one should be harassed, threatened, or harmed based on the car they drive. Okay, I agree with that sentiment. Okay, I don't think you should be harassed or hurt. And there's already like laws against vandalism. You can't vandalize someone's car. If you catch them on your HOA security footage, you see what they were driving or what they were wearing, you can file a police report. All right. There will be a lookout on that person. But the idea that we're in a moment where protections under the law are being stripped from women, from trans people, from Black people, from queer people, that we're losing our rights by the moment, and this person wants to make destroying or vandalizing a car based on the fact that it's a Tesla, they want to make it a hate crime. Like the space-time continuum of the civil rights movement, the Rubicon has been crossed. We're whatever we are. We're in warp speed. We're in plaid, to quote, Spaceballs. Like, this is truly insanity. Like, this is what happens when the Karens and the Kevins win. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just own it. It's bad enough. It's bad. What I love about this is, it's not like, hey, Congressman, I don't like being associated with Elon Musk, or like maybe we should put a little bit more of a firewall in between the government and this guy who owns a car company. The car company I so happen to drive. What are you doing to make sure that a private citizen billionaire / a guy who owns a car company is, not in control of the federal government? Like that's where my mind goes when I talk to my electeds. But no, a hate crime. Amazing. Oh my God, we love you, Mr. Miller, and all of the time that you happen to have on your hands. Anywho, sound off in the comments as to whether you think it should be a hate crime. Guys, there's so much more I could say, but I shan't, because I'm literally losing my voice. Let's read some comments and then have a great weekend, a terrible weekend. Peaceful Earth says, me and my grandmother in her 80s watch your show and we laugh and cry together while we learn. You're so brave and we wish we could all have a mom like you. Oh my God, that's so sweet. That's so nice of you to say. Yeah, my daughter better be fucking grateful. Oh my God. Okay, I have to just share this. Speaking of being an amazing mom, if you know who Miss Rachel is, I just want to say Miss Rachel and I are now DMing one another. Miss Rachel is a YouTube mom content creator, massive, and my daughter loves her, and she has spoken out for Gaza, and she talked about Hind Rajab, the young 6-year-old who was murdered in her car by the IDF, and I posted something. Point is this, she followed me back, now we're DMing. I don't think she would ever do the show, but I just have to brag about that and tell you all that Miss Rachel definitely and I are definitely DMing. And we're just we love Hamas, we love Hamas. I'm kidding, it's a joke. It's obviously we're not saying that, but I was just oh, thank you for everything you've done. You're amazing. Congrats on everything. Cause she really came up from just making videos in her room, in her, in her home during the pandemic. She became a star in the hearts of every toddler. Thank you, Doug, for the super chat. Snack Panther, when SpaceX crashes, When SpaceX crashes rockets, that's taxpayer money going up in flames. It is. It is. You're exactly right. I didn't even mention the fact that we already subsidize these things. Over on Twitch, thank you so much, Hello Lovely Scientist. I hope you're a lovely scientist. Subscribe with Prime, 13 months strong. Assembling Girly also. Thank you, Zachap, for the raid. Thank you, Shy This One, for subscribing with Prime. Bienvenidos. Jimmy Bear 420 resubscribed with Prime. Says, love you, Franny. Shout out to Paige as well. Yes, shout out to Paige indeed. Imitation Asian said, missed a lot, but always supporting you and your work over turf grifting any day. Well, thank you, Imitation Asian, for subscribing 18 months strong. Appreciate y'all. And welcome to new membership, Ryan Herring. Thank you, Jeremy Lowell, for giving 5 gifted subs to the show. That's so nice of you. Everybody gets that Wednesday episode in its full glory and grandeur. Kathy McIntyre says, thank you for being a person that does not back down from their beliefs. Also, thank you very much for being an ally to the transgender community. Thank you, Kathy. It's the least I could do, and appreciate you being a member. Truly the least I could do. What else are we doing, right? Brody Pennick, welcome to membership. And officials, People's Party USA is now a member. Hello. Robert says life during wartime. I think that's in reference to, Anthony. And Creeflow says, keep up the good work, Francesca. You know what I mean? P.S. Guest recommendations, Rebecca Azor from Leftist Mafia and Australian comedian Jenny Tien. Appreciate those. Great suggestions. I love Rebecca. I've been wanting to get her on. Official People Party says, dig the shirt and support. Thank you. Groot, come take me away. I think that's a Guardians of the Galaxy reference. Thank you, Puck, for becoming a member, and Angel Ninja and Lisa Marie. Maybe I'll shout you guys out also on Tuesday. Appreciate all of y'all. And until Tuesday, when God, who's on our show? It's going to be good. Wait, whatever. You'll just wait. You guys are wonderful. Become a patron, patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Tip the show, TBR-Live on Venmo, TBR Live on Cash App, merchandise, bitchuationroom.com. And of course, come see me live, Sacramento, Sunday, March 16th with Matt Lieb. See me live at Cobb's Comedy in San Francisco on Wednesday, May 7th. And of course, here in Pasadena for my show, New World Disorder, Wednesday, March 26th. Comedian Trey Crowder and James Adomian will be there. It's going to be so good. And until next time, do all the things. I love y'all. Bye.